Section 59 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 25. Purgatory, the seventh ring. Lust. Sensuality punished. Instances of chastity.
The hour was when ascent brooked no delay, because the sun had left the noontime ring to Taurus, as to Scorpio had the night. Therefore, as doth a man who, whatsoe'er appear to him, stops not, but goes his way, if spurred by goading of necessity, so, one before the other, through the gap we entered in, and took the flight of stairs, which by its narrowness parts those who climb. And like the little stork which lifts its wings, because it longs to fly, but ventures not to leave its nest, and lets them droop again, even such was I, with kindled and with quenched desire to ask, when coming to the act of one who starts to speak. Nor, though our pace was fast, did my dear father check himself, but said to me,
"Discharge the bow of speech, which to the arrowhead thou now hast drawn."
With confidence I opened then my mouth, and said, How can one possibly grow lean, where need of nourishment doth not obtain?
"Shouldst thou recall,"
He said,
"how, when the brand was burning, Meleager was consumed, this would not be so difficult for thee. And shouldst thou think how, at your quivering, your image quivers in the looking-glass, that which seems hard to thee would easy seem. But that thou ease thee to thy heart's content, lo, here is Statius. Him I call and beg that he be now a healer of thy wounds."
If I unfold for him the eternal view when in thy presence,
Statius then replied,
be my excuse that I cannot refuse thee.
He then began,
If, son, thy mind shall hear and understand my words, they'll prove a light for thee unto the how which thou dost ask. The perfect blood which by the thirsty veins is never drunk, but stays as doth the food which from the table thou dost take away, gets in the heart a power informative for all the human members, being that which floweth through the veins to form the same. When redigested, it flows down to parts whereof more seemly silence is than speech. Then on another's blood it trickles thence into the natural vessel. There both meet, passive the one, the other active, since perfect the place from which it was distilled. Joining the former, it begins to work, coagulating first, then quickening that which it had formed as matter for itself. The active virtue now become a soul, as of a plant, though so far differing from it, that this is on its way and that arrived. So worketh next, that now it moves and feels like fungi of the sea, then undertakes to organize the powers whose germ it is. That virtue, son, now spreads and now extends, which from the generator's heart derives, where nature on all members is intent. But how from animal it comes to be a child, thou seest not yet, a point so hard it led a wiser man than thou so far astray, that in his teaching from the soul he parted the potential intellect, because he saw no organ it assumed. Open thy mind unto the coming truth, and know that when the brain's organization is in the fetus to perfection brought, the primal mover, glad of such a work of nature, turns toward it, and breathes therein a spirit new and full of powers, which draws into its substance what it active finds therein, and so becomes a single soul, which lives and feels, and on itself reflects. And that the less thou wonder at my words, consider how to wine the suns he turns when joined to juices flowing from the vine. When lachesis hath no more thread, the soul frees itself from the flesh and bears away, potentially, the human and divine. Mute one and all the other faculties, with memory, intelligence, and will far keener in their action than before. Then, without stopping, of itself it falls in wondrous way to one or other shore. Here first it learns its road. As soon as place has circumscribed it there, the forming virtue raised round it in the same degree and way as when the members were alive it did. and as the air, when fully charged with rain, is by another's rays, which it reflects within itself, adorned with many hues, so here the neighboring air takes on the shape the soul which settled there, and presses on it, as would a seal, by its own forming power, and afterward, as doth the little flame, which follows fire where'er it changes place, so the new shape accompanies its spirit, which, since it hence takes visibility, is called a shade, and therewith organizes each of the senses up to that of sight. By means of this we speak, by means of this we laugh, and by this means we make the tears and sighs thou mayst have heard upon the mount. As our desires and other passions move us, our shade takes shape accordingly, and this the reason is of what thou wonderest at.
We now had reached the final circling place, and to the right hand having turned our steps, intent we were upon another care. The bank here outwardly shoots forth a flame, while upward from the ledge below a blast is breathed, which drives it back and keeps it off. Hence one by one along the open side we had to walk, while I on one hand feared the fire, and on the other falling down. My leader said to me,
Along this path a tight rein must be kept upon one's eyes, for one might very easily go wrong.
Oh, 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 God of highest clemency.
I then heard sung within the bosom of the fire, whose glowing no less made me wish to turn, and spirits moving through the flame I saw. Hence at their steps I looked, and at mine own, lending my eyes to each from time to time. After the lines with which that hymn concludes, aloud they shouted,
I know not a man.
Then in low tones began the hymn again. They cried again, this ended,
To the woods Diana kept, and thence drove Enlice, for having known the taste of Venus' poison.
Then they resumed the song, and then proclaimed the names of wives and husbands who were chaste, as virtue and the marriage state enjoin. And this course, I believe, suffices them for all the period during which the fire is burning them, and such the care and diet wherewith the wound is finally sewed up.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 25. Section 60 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 26. Purgatory, the seventh ring. Lust. Instances of natural and unnatural lust.
While thus, one for the other, long the edge we went, and my good teacher often said,
Attention pay, and let my warning help thee.
The sun, which with its rays was changing now from azure all the western skies to white, was on my right side striking me, and I was with my shadow giving to the flame a brighter red. I noticed many shades give heed to this small sign as on they moved. This was what started them to speak of me, and they began to say among themselves,
That one seems not to have an unreal body.
Then some of them, as far as possible, drew near to me, though always with due care not to come out where they would not be burned.
O thou that goest on behind the rest, though not from sloth, but from respect, perhaps reply to me, who burn with thirst and fire, nor is by me alone thine answer needed, for all these here have greater thirst therefore than Indians or Ethiopians for cold water. Inform us how it is that with thyself thou makest thus a wall against the sun, as if thou hadst not entered death's snare yet.
Thus one of them addressed me, and at once had I declared myself had I not heeded another novelty which then appeared. For through the middle of the flaming road folk with their faces turned the other way came on, and made me stop to gaze at them. There all the shades on every side I see make haste, and without stopping kiss each other, with this short form of greeting satisfied. Thus one ant from among its dark host touches its muzzle to another's, to obtain, perhaps, directions as to path or fortune. As soon as they leave off their friendly greeting, and ere the first step has been taken there, each struggles to outcry the other shade. The new-come band shouts,
Sodom and Gomorrah!
The other,
And the cow Pasiphae,
reclines, that to her lust the bull may run.
Thereat, like cranes, if some of them should fly toward the Riphean heights, and toward the sands the rest, these shunning ice, and those the sun, one band departs, the other comes along, and weeping to their previous song they turn, and to the cry which best befitteth them. Then those same shades who had entreated me drew near to me, as they had done before, with eagerness to listen in their looks. And I, who twice had seen what they desired, began, O souls, who now are sure of having, whenever it may be, a state of peace, my body's members have not stayed beyond, either unripe or ripe, but with their blood and with their joints are really with me here. I hence go up to be no longer blind. On high a lady wins us grace, whereby I carry through your world my mortal part. But so may your best wish be soon fulfilled, in order that that heaven may shelter you which full of love is amplest in its spread. Tell me, that I may rule more paper for it, both who ye are, and what is yonder crowd which onward goes its way behind your backs. A mountaineer becomes not otherwise confused, nor looking round grows dumb, when rough and wild he enters first a town, than each shade did in its appearance there. But when set free from that astonishment, which soon diminishes in high-born hearts, the one who questioned me before resumed,
Happy art thou that shippest thus experience of these our bounds, that better thou mayst live. The people who come not along with us, in that offended, for which Caesar once, when triumphing, heard Queen cried out against him. From us they therefore separate with cries of Sodom, and by self-reproach assist, as thou hast heard, the burning by their shame. Our sin was intersexual; but since we, by following our appetites like beasts, fail to conform ourselves to human law, to our confusion, when we leave the others, her name we cry, who bestialized herself, by lying in the beast-resembling frame. Thou knowest now our deeds, and what our guilt. If who we are thou'dst know, perhaps by name, there is no time to tell, nor could I do it. As to myself, I'll rid thee of thy wish. I'm Guido Gwinetzelli, and purge me now, because of grieving well before the end.
As in Lycurgus' anguish those two sons became, when they again beheld their mother, even such did I, though I went not so far, when him I heard self-named, who father was to me and others, better men than I, who e'er made sweet and graceful rhymes of love. Hence, lost in thought, nor hearing aught or speaking, I moved, and long I gazed at him in wonder. But for the fire no nearer drew to him. When I, with looking, had been fully fed, I put myself entirely at his service with those assurances which win belief. And he,
Thou leav'st in me a memory from what I hear, so great and plain, that Lethe can neither wipe it out nor make it dim. But, if thy words swore what was true just now, tell me, why hast thou by thy speech and looks revealed to me that thou dost hold me dear?
and I to him, 'twas those sweet rhymes of yours, which, while the modern form of speech endures, will e'er endear to me their very ink.
Brother,
He said,
he whom I indicate
he pointed at a spirit on a head,
was of his mother tongue a better smith. In love songs and in stories of romance he vanquished all. Hence let those fools talk on, who think the Limousin excelleth him. To rumour, rather than to truth, they turn their faces, forming their opinions thus, ere art or reason have by them been heeded. Thus with Gritoni many ancients did, giving, from cry to him alone the prize, until with most the truth prevailed. If now so amply privileged thou art, that lawful is thy going to the cloister, where Christ is abbot of the brotherhood, a paternoster say to him for me, or all of it that we in this world need, wherein no longer it is ours to sin.
And then, perhaps to yield his place to one near by him there, he vanished through the fire, as to the bottom would a fish through water. Toward him who had been pointed out I moved a little way, and said that my desire was for his name a gracious place preparing.
Your courteous question,
he unurged began,
delighteth me so much that I cannot, nor do I wish to, hide myself from you. Arnaut am I, who going weep and sing, with sorrow my past folly I behold, and see with joy the hoped-for coming day. Now, by the power which guides you to the top of this short flight of stairs, I beg you, be mindful in due time of this my pain.
Then in the fire refining them he hid.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 26. Section 61 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 27. Purgatory, the seventh ring. Lust, the angel of purity. Dante's third dream. Virgil's last words.
As when he sends his earliest quivering beams where his Creator shed his blood, while Ebro 'neath lofty Libra falls, and Ganges' waves are being scalded by the heat of noon, so stood the sun. Daylight was, hence, departing, when God's glad messenger appeared to us. Outside the flames, upon the bank he stood, and in a voice far clearer than his ours, was singing,
No further may ye go, ye holy souls, until the fire have burned you. Enter it, and be not deaf unto the song beyond.
He told us next, when we were near to him. Hence I, on hearing him, became like one who in the grave is laid. Clasping my hands together, over them I bowed, and watched the fire, while vivid images I formed of human bodies I had once seen burned. Toward me my kindly escorts turned around, and Virgil said to me,
There may, my son, be pain here, but not death. Recall to mind, recall to mind. If even on Gerion's back I safely led thee, what shall I do now that nearer God I am? Assuredly believe that, if within the centre of this flame thou shouldst for even 1,000 years remain, it could not make thee lose a single hair. And if, perchance, thou think that I deceive thee, draw near to it, and make thyself believe with thine own hands upon thy garment's hem. Lay now aside all fear. Turn round toward me, and come ahead, assured.
And yet, though 'gainst my conscience, I moved not. On seeing me still motionless and firm, somewhat disturbed, he said,
Now see, my son, this wall remains 'tween Beatrice and thee.
As Pyramus, when dying, at the name of Thisbe oped his eyes and looked at her, what time the mulberry became vermilion. Even so, my stubbornness becoming weak, I turned to my wiser leader when I heard the name that ever wells up in my heart. Thereat he shook his head and said,
What's this? Do we on this side wish to stay?
Then smiled, as one does at a child an apple wins. Then entering the fire in front of me, Statius he begged to come behind, who erst had over a long road divided us. When once inside, I would have thrown myself, that I might cool me, into boiling glass, so without measure was the burning there. My tender father, to encourage me, talked, as we moved, of Beatrice alone, and said,
I seem to see her eyes already.
A voice that sang upon the further side was guiding us, and we, on it alone intent, came forth to where the ascent began.
Ye blessed of my father come,
was said within a light there, such that I thereby was overcome, and could not look at it.
the sun is setting, and the evening comes.
It added,
Tarry not, but hasten on, while yet the western sky has not grown dark.
Straight upward went the pathway through the rock in such direction that in front of me I cut the low sun's rays. Not many stairs had we yet tried, when I and my wise leaders were, by my shadow's vanishing, aware that back of us the sun had gone to rest. And ere in all of its unmeasured range the horizon had assumed one single tone, and night had everywhere diffused itself, each of a step had made himself a bed. Because the nature of the mount deprived us rather of power to climb than of desire. Like goats which, swift of foot and wanton once when on the mountain heights, ere being fed, grow tamely quiet when they ruminate, all silent in the shade, while yet the sun is hot, and guarded by a herd who leans upon his staff, and serves them as he leans. And like the shepherd in the open living, who calmly spends the night beside his flock, and keepeth watch lest some wild animal should scatter it. Even such all three of us were then, I like a goat, and they like shepherds, by the high rock hemmed in on either side. But little of the outer world could there be seen, but through that little I perceived the stars more bright and larger than their wont. While I was ruminating thus, and thus was gazing at them, sleep o'ertook me, sleep which oft receiveth news of future things before they are, at that same hour methinks when Cytherea, who it seems e'er burns with fires of love, beamed first upon the mount from out the east, dreaming I seemed to see a lady young and fair, who, gathering flowers, was walking through a field, and as she sang, said,
Know who asks my name that I am Leah, and that I move my lovely hands about to make myself a wreath, to please myself when at my mirror I adorn me here. But never doth my sister Rachel leave her looking-glass, but sits there all day long. Her pleasure is to see her lovely eyes, as mine is to adorn me with my hands. Seeing contenteth her, and doing me.
And now before the splendid beams of dawn, which rise with greater thanks from travellers, as coming home they lodge less far away, the shades of night were fleeing everywhere, and with them sleep, hence I arose and saw that my great teachers had already risen.
That pleasant fruit, which on so many boughs the care of men is ever looking for, shall give thine every hunger peace to-day.
These were the very words which Virgil used, when turned toward me, and never were there gifts which in their sweetness could have equalled these. Such longing upon longing overcame me to be above, that at each step thereafter I felt my pinions growing for the flight. When all the stairway had beneath us passed, and we were standing on its topmost step, on me then Virgil fixed his eyes, and said,
The temporal and the eternal fire, my son, thou now hast seen, and to a place art come where I can of myself no further see. I have brought thee here by genius and by art. Henceforth as leader thine own pleasure take. Forth art thou from both steep and narrow paths. Behold the sun there shining on thy brow, behold the tender grass, the flowers and shrubs, which here the soil yields of itself alone. Until in happiness those lovely eyes appear, which, weeping, made me come to thee, thou mayst be seated, or among them walk. From me expect no further word or sign. Free, right, and sound is thine own will, and wrong were not to act according to its hest. Hence o'er thyself I crown and mitre thee.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 27. Section 62 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 28. Terrestrial Paradise, the Divine Forest. Matilda, the River Lethe.
Keen now to look within and round about the wood divine, whose foliage dense and green was tempering for mine eyes the new day's light, waiting no longer there I left the edge, and entered very slowly on the plain, across a soil which everywhere breathed fragrance. A pleasant breeze, unvaried in itself, smote me upon the forehead with a stroke no greater than a gently blowing wind, whereby the branches trembling readily were all of them in that direction swaying, where first the holy mount its shadow casts. Yet ne'er deflecting from their upright state so much, that on their tops the little birds should give up practising their every art. But singing with full gladness they received the earliest breezes 'mong the leaves, which sang in undertone a burden to their songs, like that which gathers strength from bough to bough throughout the grove of pines on Chiassi's shore, when Aeolus has set Scirocco free. My slow steps now had carried me so far inside the ancient wood that I no longer could see whence I had entered it. Then lo, a stream deprived me of advancing further, which with its little waves was toward the left bending the grass which sprang upon its bank. All waters which are purest here on earth would seem to have within themselves some mixture, if they should be compared to that one there, which hideth naught, though very darkly flowing neath the perpetual shade, which ne'er allows the rays of sun or moon to shine on it. I checked my feet, and with mine eyes passed on beyond the little stream, to gaze upon the great variety of flowering trees. And there, as when aught suddenly appears that turns through wonder every thought aside, a lady all alone appeared to me, who singing went her way and picking flowers, wherewith her path on every side was painted. Prithee, fair lady, thou that in love's beams art warming thee, if outward looks I trust, which use to be a witness to the heart, let it thy pleasure be, said I to her, to draw thee forward toward this stream so far, that I may understand what thou art singing. Thou makest me recall both where and what Proserpina was at the time when her mother lost, and she the flowers of spring. As turns around a lady who while dancing her feet together keeps and on the ground, and hardly sets one foot before the other, so on the little red and yellow flowers turned she toward me, no otherwise than would a virgin lowering her modest eyes, and satisfied my prayers, for near to me she drew in such a way that her sweet tones reached me with all of their significance. As soon as she was where the grass is bathed by that fair river's wavelets, she conferred on me the gift of raising up her eyes. Nor do I think so bright a light shone forth from under Venus's eyelids, when transfixed, wholly against his custom, by her son. As smiling on the other bank she stood, her hands kept picking other bright-hued flowers, which without seed the highland there brings forth. The river kept us still 3 steps apart, but even the Hellespont, where Xerxes crossed it, a bridle still to every human pride, endured no greater hatred from Leander, because it surged 'tween Sestos and Abydos, than this from me, because it then oped not.
Newcomers are ye,
she began,
and hence, because I smile in this place, which was chosen for human nature as its nest, some doubt, perhaps, still keeps you wondering here. And yet the psalm called Delectasti gives you light, which from your minds can drive away your mist. And thou that art in front, and didst entreat me, say whether thou wouldst hear aught else, for I came ready for thine every question's need.
The water and the music of the wood, said I, impugn in me a recent faith in what I heard, which contradicted this, when she,
I'll tell thee how from its own cause proceedeth that which makes thee wonder now, and clear the mist obstructing thee, the good supreme, which only by itself is pleased, made man both good and apt to good, and gave him this place as earnest of eternal peace. Through his own fault he but a little while stayed here, through his own fault, for tears and toil exchanged he honest laughter and sweet play, in order that the trouble which below the earth's and water's exhalations cause by their own trend, which is to follow heat as best they may, should wage no war on man. This mountain rose up toward the sky thus far, and free from them it is from where it's locked. And now, since all the atmosphere revolves and circles with the sphere of primal motion, unless its whirling round be somewhere broken, such motion strikes against this eminence, which in the living air is wholly free, and makes the forest, which is dense, resound, And so much power hath the stricken plant, that with its virtue it imbues the air, which by revolving scatters it about. The other land, as able of itself, or through its climate, next conceives and bears the diverse qualities of diverse trees. If this were heard, it would not seem to be a wonder yonder, when a plant takes root, without there being evidence of seed. And thou must know that all this holy plain, where thou art now, is full of every seed, and fraught with fruit, which yonder is not picked. The water thou beholdest wells not up from fountains fed by mists, condensed by cold, as doth a stream which gains and loses breath, but issues from a sure and constant fount, which by the will of God regains as much as, open on both sides, it poureth forth. On this side with a virtue it descends, which takes from men all memory of sin. On the other it restoreth that of all good deeds. On this side it is Lethe called, on the other Eunoe, and worketh not, till tasted both on this side and on that. This greater is than are all other savours, and though thy thirst might be completely sated, should I reveal no more to thee, I'll give thee a corollary as further grace. Nor do I think my words will be less dear to thee, should they extend beyond my promise. Those who in ancient times sang of the age of gold, and of its happy state, perchance dreamed on Parnassus of this very place. Here was the root of mankind innocent. Spring's flowers and every fruit are always here. The nectar this, whereof all poets speak.
Thereat I turned around, and having faced my poets, I perceived that they had heard this last interpretation with a smile. Then toward the lady beautiful I turned my face.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 28. Section 63 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 29. Terrestrial Paradise, the River Lethe, the mystic pageant of the Church.
Singing as an enamoured lady would, when once her words were ended, she went on,
Blessed are they whose sins are covered up.
and like the nymphs who used to go alone through woodland shades, desiring one to see, the other to avoid the sun, she then moved counter to the stream's course, going up along its bank, and I at even pace, matching her little steps with steps as small. Her paces were with mine not yet 100, when both the margins equally were bent in such a way that toward the east I faced. Nor had we yet as far again moved on, when round toward me the lady wholly turned, and said,
My brother, look and listen now.
And lo, so bright a lustre suddenly traversed the mighty wood in all directions, that I of lightning was compelled to think. But since this ceases as it comes, while that, the longer it endured, the brighter grew, within me I kept saying, What is this? And through the illumined air was running now a gentle melody. Hence righteous zeal made me reproach the hardihood of Eve, who, while both earth and heaven obedient were, the only woman, and but just created, could not endure to stay beneath a veil; 'neath which, if she had but devoutly kept, I should have tasted those unspeakable delights before, and for a longer time. While I, mid such first fruits of bliss eternal, was going all enwrapt, and eager still for further joys, in front of us the air 'neath the green boughs became a blazing fire, and that sweet sound was now known as a song. O Virgin sacrosanct, if I have ever been hungry, cold, or sleepless for your sake, good reasons spur my claiming a reward. For me now Helicon must pour her streams, and with her choir Urania give me help to set in verse things difficult to think. A little further on, the lengthy space still intervening 'tween ourselves and them, showed falsely what appeared 7 trees of gold. But when I'd drawn so near to them, that now the common object which deceiveth sense, because of distance lost no attribute, the virtue which prepares discourse for reason perceived that they were candlesticks, and heard Hosanna in the voices of the song. Above, the fair array flamed far more brightly than in unclouded skies the midnight moon, when at the middle of her monthly course. Filled with astonishment, I turned around to my good Virgil, and he answered me with looks no less with wonder fraught. I then gazed back again at those exalted things, which toward us moved so slowly, that outrun they would have been by newly wedded brides. The lady chided me.
Why dost thou gaze so ardently at those bright lights alone, and dost not look at that which follows them?
I then saw people who were coming on, as if behind their leaders, clothed in white, and never was such whiteness here on earth. The water was resplendent on my left, and like a mirror, if I looked in it, reflected back my body's left to me. When I was on my bank so placed, that now only the river kept me at a distance, I checked my steps that I might better see, and I beheld the little flames advance, leaving the air behind them bright with colour, and look like strokes a painter's brush had drawn; so that, above, the air remained marked out by 7 long bands, all in the hues wherewith the sun his bow, and Delia makes her belt. These standards further to the rear extended than I could see. As far as I could judge, the outermost 10 paces were apart. There now were coming 'neath as fair a sky as I describe here 24 elders, 2 at a time, and crowned with fleurs-de-lis, and all of them were saying,
Blessed be thou 'mong Adam's daughters.
Ay, and blessed be throughout eternity thy beauty's charms.
after the flowers and other tender blooms in front of me upon the other bank had been set free from that elected folk, as in the sky star follows after star, so after these 4 living creatures came, each with a wreath of verdant foliage crowned. And each of them was feathered with 6 wings, their feathers full of eyes, and these were such as, were they living, Argus's eyes would be. I'll waste no more rhymes, reader, to describe their forms, for other spending so constrains me, that I in this one cannot be profuse. But read thou in Ezekiel, who depicts them, as from the sky's cold parts he saw them move, accompanied by wind, and clouds, and fire. And such, as in his pages thou wilt find them, such were they here, except that, as to wings, John is with me, and disagrees with him. The space extending 'tween the 4 contained a triumph chariot moving on 2 wheels, which came along drawn by a griffon's neck. Both of his wings the latter stretched on high 'tween the mid-banner and the 3 and 3, so that by cleaving it he injured none. So high they rose that they were lost to sight. His members were of gold as far as bird he was, and white the others mixed with red. Not only Rome ne'er with so fair a car made Africanus or Augustus glad, but even the suns were poor compared with this. The suns, which, when it lost its way, was burned in answer to the suppliant earth's request, when Jupiter inscrutably was just. At its right wheel 3 ladies in a ring came dancing on, the first so red, that hardly would she be noticed if in fire she were, and such the second was, as if her flesh and very bones were made of emeralds. The third one looked like newly fallen snow, and now led by the white one they appeared, now by the red, and from the latter's song the others took their time, both slow and fast. Upon the left hand 4 in purple clothed were making glad, according to the gait of one of them with 3 eyes in her head. Behind the whole group I have here described, 2 old men I beheld, unlike in clothes, but like in mien, both dignified and grave. One showed himself a pupil of that great Hippocrates, whom for the animals she loves most dearly nature made. The other revealed the opposite intention with a sword so glittering and sharp that though I stood on this side of the stream it caused me fear. Then 4 I saw who were of humble mien, and back of all an aged, keen-faced man advancing by himself and lost in sleep. These 7 were robed in garments which resembled those of the primal company, though on their heads they wore not lily garlands, but were crowned with roses and with other crimson flowers. A distant sight of them had made one swear that all on fire they were above their brows. And when the chariot was abreast of me, thunder was heard, whereat those worthy people appeared to have advance forbidden them, and stopped there with the standards in their van.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 29. Section 64 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 30. Terrestrial Paradise. Lethe. Appearance of Beatrice. Disappearance of Virgil.
When the septentrion of the highest heaven, which never either setting knew or rising, or veil of other mist than that of guilt, and which was causing every creature there to know his duty, as the lower one makes him who turns the helm to reach a port, stopped suddenly. The people of the truth, who first had come between it and the griffin, turned around toward the car, as toward their peace, and one of them, as though from heaven sent down, sang thrice aloud,
Come thou from Lebanon, my spouse.
and all the rest sang after him. As at the last trump call, each of the blessed will quickly rise from out his tomb, and sing the Hallelujah with a voice regained. Even so there rose upon the car divine, at such an elder's voice, 100 servants and message-bearers of eternal life. They all were saying,
Blessed be thou that comest.
and strewing flowers on high and all around,
O scatter forth your lilies with full hands.
I've seen ere now, when day began to dawn, the eastern skies all rosy, and the rest adorned with beauty and serenity. And then the sun rise with its face o'ershadowed in such a way that, through the tempering of mists, the human eye could long endure it. So likewise standing in a cloud of flowers, which rose from angel hands, and fell again within and out the car, a lady crowned with a wreath of olives or a pure white veil appeared before me, 'neath a cloak of green, clothed with the colour of a living flame. My spirit hereupon, which for so long a time had not been trembling in her presence, or felt itself all broken down with awe, with no more knowledge of her by mine eyes, but through a hidden virtue issuing from her, felt the great power of the olden love. As soon as that high virtue smote my sight, which formerly had pierced me through and through, ere I had passed beyond my boyhood's years, round to the left I turned me with the trust wherewith an infant to its mother runs, whenever terrified or in distress, to say to Virgil, Less now than a dram of blood remains in me that is not trembling, I feel the tokens of the olden flame. But Virgil now had left us of himself deprived, Virgil, my dearest father Virgil, to whom for my salvation I had given me. Nor yet did all our ancient mother lost avail to keep my cheeks, though cleansed with dew, from turning dark again because of tears.
Dante, though Virgil leave, weep thou not yet. Weep thou not yet, for thou wilt need to weep by reason of another sword than this.
Even as an admiral who both on stern and prow comes to behold the men that serve on the other ships and urge them to do well, so likewise on the left side of the car, when I had turned around me at the sound of mine own name, which here must needs be mentioned, I saw the lady who had first appeared concealed beneath the angels' festival, direct her eyes toward me across the stream. Although the veil, which from her head hung down, encircled by Minerva's olive leaves, did not allow her to appear distinctly, she went on royally, still stern in mien, as one doth who, when speaking, holdeth back his warmest words.
Look at us well, for we indeed are Beatrice. How wast thou able to approach the mountain? Didst thou not know that man is happy here?
My lowered eyes fell on the limpid stream, But when I saw myself reflected there, I drew them to the grass, so great the shame that weighed my forehead down. As to her child a mother seems severe, so she to me, for bitter tastes the savour of harsh pity. Silent she kept, then suddenly the angels chanted,
In thee, Lord, have I set my trust.
but further than my feet they did not go. Even as the snow among the living beams grown on the back of Italy is frozen, when blown and hardened by Slavonian winds, and then, when melting, trickles through itself, if but the land that loses shadows breathe, and thus seems like a fire that melts a candle. Even so was I with neither tears nor sighs, before the song of those who ever tune their notes to music of eternal spheres. But when I heard in their sweet harmonies the sympathy they had for me, far more than had they said, "Why, lady, shame him so," the ice bound tightly round my heart was turned to breath and water, and through mouth and eyes issued with anguish from my inmost breast. Then she, still standing motionless upon the same side of the car, addressed those sympathetic creatures with these words:
Ye keep your watches through the eternal day, so that nor night nor slumber robs from you one step the world may take upon its course. My answer hence is made with greater care, that he who yonder weeps may understand, in guilt and sorrow of one measure be. Not only through the work of those great spheres, which to some end directly guide each seed, according as the stars are its companions, but through the bounty of the grace divine, which for its reign hath clouds so very high our eyes cannot approach them. This one here was such potentially in early life, that all right dispositions would have had wondrous results in him. But all the more malign and savage doth a soil become, when sown with evil seed and left untilled, the better and more vigorous it is. I for a while sustained him with my face, and showing him my youthful eyes, I led him along with me, turned in the right direction. But when the threshold of my second age I reached, and changed my life, he took himself away from me, and gave him to another. And when from flesh to spirit I had risen, and beauty and virtue had increased in me, less dear and pleasing was I then to him, and o'er an untrue path he turned his steps, following deceitful images of good, which not that they have promised pay in full. Nor yet did it avail me to obtain the inspirations wherewith both in dreams and otherwise I called him back, he cared so little for them. So low down he fell, that short were now all means for his salvation, save showing him the people that are lost. I visited the gateway of the dead for this, and unto him who guided him up hither, fraught with tears, my prayers were borne. God's high, fate-ordered will would broken be, if Lethe should be passed, and should such food be tasted, without paying first the scot of penitence made manifest by tears. End of Purgatorio, Canto 30. Section 65 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 31. Terrestrial Paradise. Dante's Confession. His immersion in Lethe. Beatrice unveiled. O thou that art across the sacred stream!
Toward me directing with its point her speech, which even edgewise had seemed sharp to me. Continuing, she began without delay.
Say if this be true, to such a charge must thy confession be united now.
My strength was so confounded that my voice began to move, and wholly died away, ere by its organs it had been released. A while she bore it. Then,
What thinkest thou?
She said,
Reply, for thy sad memories are not extinguished by the water yet.
Perplexity and fear together mixed extorted such a yes from out my mouth that eyes to hear its utterance were required. Even as a crossbow breaks its cord and bow, whenever with too great attention shot, and with less force the arrow strikes its mark, so 'neath that heavy burden I broke down, and as I poured forth gushing tears and sighs, my voice more slowly through its passage came. Then she,
Across the paths which I desired, and which were leading thee to love the good, beyond which there is nothing one can wish, what trenches didst thou find, or hindering chains, for which thou thus must needs despoil thyself of hope of further progress on thy way? What luring charms or what advantages displayed themselves upon the brows of others, that thou shouldst pay thy passing court to them?
Thereat, when I had heaved a bitter sigh, I scarcely had the voice to make an answer, and painfully my lips gave form to it. Weeping, I said, "Things of the present turned with their delusive joy my steps aside, as soon as e'er your face was hid from me."
"Hadst thou been silent, or hadst thou denied,"
said she,
"what thou confessest, no less clear would be thy guilt, since known by such a judge. But when self-accusation of one's sin from one's own cheek breaks forth, in this our court the wheel is turned to blunt the sharpened edge. And yet, that for thy fault thou mayst be now the more ashamed, and that, when thou again shalt hear the sirens, thou mayst stronger be, desist thou now from sowing tears, and hark! So shalt thou hear o'er what a different path my buried body should have moved thy feet. Nature ne'er showed thee, nor did art, such beauty as did the pleasing members which enclosed me, and which are scattered now, dissolved in earth. Hence, if the highest pleasure failed thee thus by reason of my death, what mortal thing should afterward have drawn thee to desire it? At the first arrow of deceitful things, thou surely oughtest to have risen up to follow me, who was no longer such. Thy wings, at least, should not have been weighed down to wait for further blows from some young girl or other vain thing of as brief a use. A young bird waits for 2 blows or for 3, but for the eyes of fully feathered birds a net is spread or arrow shot in vain."
As children who are silent when ashamed, and with their eyes upon the ground keep listening, and conscience-stricken and repentant are, so I remained, and she,
"Since thou art grieved because of hearing me, lift up thy beard, and thou from seeing shalt receive more grief."
"With less resistance is a sturdy oak uprooted, either by our native wind, or by the wind that blows from Jaba's land, than I at her behest raised up my chin. And when by beard she asked to see my face, I well perceived the venom in her words. Thereafter, when my face was raised again, I saw that those first creatures were at rest from strewing flowers, and thereupon mine eyes, which were as yet but partially assured, saw Beatrice turned toward the animal which in 2 natures one sole person is. Though 'neath her veil, and cross the stream, it seemed to me that she surpassed her old-time self, more than she did all others when on earth. So pricked me now the nettle of repentance, that of all other things what turned me most unto its love became to me most hostile. Whereat such great contrition gnawed my heart, that overcome I fell, and what I then became she knows who gave me cause for it. Then, when my heart restored my outward strength, I saw the lady I found alone, above me, saying,
'Hold on to me! Hold on to me!'
Into the stream she had already borne me up to my neck, and dragging me behind her, light as a shuttle o'er its top was moving. When I was near the blessed shore, I heard,
'Purge me with hyssop,'
said in tones so sweet that far from writing I cannot recall it. The lovely lady, stretching out her arms, embraced my head, and plunged me in the stream so far that I was forced to drink its water. Drawing me thence, she set me, when thus bathed, within the dance-ring of the lovely four, and each of them embraced me with her arm.
Nymphs are we here, and in the sky are stars.
Ere Beatrice came down into the world, we were ordained to be her maids.
We'll lead thee to see her eyes.
But for the joyous light, there are the 3 upon the other side, who more profoundly gaze will sharpen thine.
Thus singing they began, and thereupon they led me with them to the griffin's breast, where, turning toward us, Beatrice remained. And,
See to it that thou spare not thine eyes,
they said,
before the emeralds we have set thee, whence love of old against thee drew his shafts.
1,000 wishes hotter far than flames bound mine eyes fast to those resplendent eyes, which on the griffin set their steady gaze. As in a glass the sun, not otherwise the twofold animal was gleaming in them, at first in one, then in another way. Think, reader, if I wondered when I saw that it was keeping quiet in itself, while in its image it was changing form. while, glad and with amazement filled, my soul was tasting of the food which, while it sates, still causes thirst and hunger for itself. Proving themselves to be of higher rank by reason of their deeds, the other three came dancing to their angel roundelay.
Turn thou,
Their song was,
turn thou, Beatrice, thy holy eyes upon thy faithful one.
Who hath, to see thee, ta'en so many steps?
Kindly do us the favour to unveil thy mouth to him,
that he may thus perceive the second loveliness which thou dost hide.
O splendour of eternal living light, who 'neath Parnassus' shades e'er grew so pale, or from its cistern e'er so deeply drank, as not to feel bewildered in his mind, should he attempt to paint what thou didst seem, when, symbolized by heaven's own harmonies, thou didst reveal thee in the open air.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 31. Section 66 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 32. Terrestrial Paradise. Vicissitudes and transformation of the car. The harlot and the giant.
So steadfast were mine eyes, and so intent on gratifying their decennial thirst, that all my other senses were asleep, and both on this side and on that a wall of heedlessness they had. The holy smile so strongly drew them with the olden net, when forcibly my face was toward my left turned by those goddesses, for from their lips I now was hearing a
Too steadfastly.
Thereat the state of vision which exists in eyes but newly smitten by the sun caused me to be a while deprived of sight. But when my eyes were to the small accustomed, I say the small with reference to the great resplendence whence perforce I turned away, I saw that, on the right, the glorious host had wheeled, and was returning with the sun and with the sevenfold flame in front of it. As to protect itself a troop revolves beneath its shields and wheeleth with its flag, before the whole of it can change direction, even so the heavenly kingdom's soldiery who forward were had wholly passed us by, before its pole had made the chariot turn. Back to the wheel the ladies then returned, and so the Griffin drew his blessed burden, that, though he moved, no feather of him shook. The lady fair, who through the ford had drawn me, Statius, and I, were following the wheel which made its orbit with the smaller arc. As thus we crossed the lofty wood, unpeopled because of her who trusted to the serpent, a song angelic kept our steps in time. A liberated arrow in 3 flights, perhaps, as great a distance would have gone, as we had moved, when Beatrice alighted.
Adam.
I then heard murmured by them all. They circled then around a tree, despoiled of flowers and other leaves on every branch. Its crowning boughs, spread out in greater width, the higher up they are, would for their height be wondered at by Indians in their woods.
Thou, Griffin, happy art, since with thy beak
thou hearest not this pleasant tasting
wood,
wood, because
one's
one's
belly
belly
rises
rises
in
in
pain
therewith.
therewith.
Thus round the sturdy tree the others cried, whereat the double-natured animal
Thus is the seed of all just deeds preserved.
Then turning toward the pole which he had drawn, he dragged it forward to the widowed tree, and 'neath it left that part of it tied up. As our plants swell when falls the great light, mixed with that which shines behind the heavenly carp, and as each thereupon renews itself in its own colour, ere the sun yokes up his racing horses 'neath another star. Even so, a hue revealing, not as bright as that which roses have, and more than that of violets, that tree renewed itself, whose branches once had been so bare of leaves. I understood not, 'tis not sung on earth, the hymn which thereupon that people sang, nor did I bear to hear the whole song through. If I could picture how the unpitying eyes, on hearing Syrinx's story, sleepy grew, the eyes to which much waking cost so dear, as doth an artist who from models paints, would I describe how I then fell asleep. But let whoever will feign sleeping well. Hence to the point I pass when I awoke, and say a splendour rent my slumber's veil, and then a call.
Arise! What doest thou?
As Peter, John, and James were led to see some of the early blossoms of the apple, which makes the angels eager for its fruit, and causes endless marriage feasts in heaven, and overcome recovered at the word whereby far greater slumbers had been broken, and even as they perceived their company diminished both by Moses and Elias, and all the raiment of their master changed, so I, recovering, near me standing saw that pitying lady who before had been the leader of my steps along the stream. But where is Beatrice? All lost in doubt I said, when she...
Behold her sitting there, beneath the tree's new leaves, upon its roots. Behold the company surrounding her. The rest on high behind the griffin go, with songs of sweeter sound and deeper theme.
I know not if at greater length her words were poured, because now in mine eyes was she, who hindered my attending to aught else. On the bare ground she sat, and all alone, left there to be the guardian of the car, I saw the biformed animal tie up. Circling, the 7 nymphs with their persons formed a hedge for her, those lights held in their hands, which safe from Auster are, and Aquilo.
Here for a while shalt thou a woodman be, then without end with me a citizen of that Rome whereof Christ a Roman is. Hence, for the world's sake, which lives badly, keep thine eyes upon the car, and what thou seest be sure to write when once on earth again.
Thus Beatrice, and I, who now was wholly devoted at the feet of her commands, whither she wished turned both my mind and eyes. Fire ne'er descended with so swift a motion out of dense clouds, when from the highest region the rain is falling, as I now beheld the bird of Jove swoop down upon the tree, and break not only its new budding leaves and blossoms, but its bark. With all his might he smote the chariot next, whereat it reeled, as in a storm a ship, when by the waves to starboard now, and now to larboard driven. And then a she-fox, which from all good food seemed fasting, I perceived, hurling herself against the bottom of the triumph car. But for her ugly sins upbraiding her, my lady put her to such speedy flight as was permitted by her fleshless bones. Thereafter, whence it first had come, I saw the eagle down into the chariot's ark descend, and leave it feathered with his plumes. And such a voice as from a suffering heart comes forth was that which came from heaven, and said,
My little ship, how badly thou art laden!
Between both wheels the earth seemed opened then, and forth from it I saw a dragon come, who upward through the chariot thrust his tail, and like a wasp which draweth back its sting, withdrawing his bad tail, he drew away part of its floor, and keen for more went off. That which remained reclothed itself again, as rich soil doth with grasses, with the plumes, offered perhaps with wise and kind intent. Then one wheel and the other and the pole were covered up so quickly that a mouth is open kept much longer by a sigh. When thus the holy structure was transformed, it put forth heads upon its members, 3 upon its pole, and at each corner 1. The first were horned like oxen, but the 4 had on their foreheads but a single horn. Never had such a monster yet been seen. Sitting thereon, as boldly as a fort is seated on a lofty mountain top, a shameless prostitute appeared before me, with eyebrows that were quick to wander round, and then to see that none should take her from him, I saw a giant standing at her side. At times they kissed each other there, but since she turned her greedy fickle eyes on me, that cruel lover scourged her from her head unto her soles. Then filled with jealousy, and cruel in his wrath, loosing the monster, he dragged it through the wood so far away, that with this last alone he shielded me against the harlot and unnatural beast.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 32. Section 67 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 33. Terrestrial Paradise. Beatrice's Prophecy. Dante's final purification in the river Eunoe.
Oh God! The heathen folk are come!
Now 3, now 4 alternately, and shedding tears, the ladies a sweet psalmody began. And Beatrice with sighs of sympathy was listening to their words with such a look, that Mary at the cross changed little more. But when the other maids had given way that she might speak, she rose upon her feet, and coloured with the hue of fire, replied,
A little while, and ye shall not behold me. And then again, beloved sisters mine, a little while, and me ye shall behold.
All 7 she thereupon before her placed, and merely by a nod behind her moved me and the lady, and the sage who stayed. She thus was going on, nor do I think her 10th step had been set upon the ground, when with her eyes she forcibly met mine. Then with a tranquil face she said to me,
More quickly come, that, if I speak to thee, for listening to me thou mayst be well placed.
As soon as I was with her as I ought, she said to me,
Why, brother, dost not venture to question me, now that thou comest with me?
As unto those who show excessive reverence when speaking in the presence of their elders, and therefore draw no clear voice to their teeth, to me it happened that with imperfect tones, Madonna, I began, my welfare's needs you know, and that which may be good for it. And she to me,
From fear and bashfulness I wish thee now to extricate thyself, that thou mayst speak no more like one who dreams. Know that the vessel which the serpent broke was and is not. But let whose fault it is, believe God's vengeance fears not human sops. Nor shall the eagle airless for all time remain, who left his feathers on the car, whence monstrous it became and then a prey. For I see well, and therefore tell it, stars now near, and from all checks and obstacles secure, which for us shall a time obtain within which a 510 and 5, sent forth by God, shall kill the female thief, and that great giant, who with her is guilty. And my prediction, which is dark, perhaps, as Themis and the Sphinx, persuades thee less, because, as theirs did, it beclouds thy mind. But facts will soon become the Naiades, which shall this difficult enigma solve, without the loss of either sheep or grain. Give heed, and even as uttered by myself, see that thou teach these words of mine to those that live the life which is a race toward death, and bear in mind, when thou art writing them, not to conceal in what state thou hast seen the tree, which twice now hath been here despoiled. Whoever robs or teareth that apart, with blasphemy of deed offendeth God, who for his own use only made it holy. For biting it, in pain and in desire, the first soul longed for him 5,000 years and more, who punished in himself the bite. Thy mind is sleeping, if it deemeth not that for a special cause it soars so high, and at its summit so inverted is. And if the vain thoughts which surround thy mind had not been Elsa water, and their pleasure as to the mulberry a Pyramus, thou, by so many circumstances only, wouldst in the interdict upon the tree see morally God's justice. But since made of stone I see thee in thine understanding, and being petrified, so dark in mind that thou art blinded by my speech's light, I also, if not written, wish that painted, at least, thou bear it in thee, for the reason the pilgrim's staff is carried wreathed in palm.
and I, as sealing wax, which changes not the shape imprinted on it by the seal, so likewise is my brain now stamped by you. But why so far above my mental sight are your desired words now flying up? It loses them the more it strives.
That thou,
She said,
mayst thus appraise the school which thou hast followed, and perceive how able its teaching is to carry out my word, and also see that your ways are removed as far from the divine as ere the heaven which speeds most high is distant from the earth.
Whence her I answered, I do not recall that I have e'er estranged myself from you, nor am I conscious of remorse therefore.
And if thou canst not call it to thy mind,
She answered with a smile,
remember now that this same day thou hast of Lethe drunk, and if from smoke a fire may be inferred, this thy forgetfulness but clearly proves a fault in thy desire intent elsewhere. Truly my words shall naked be henceforth, as much at least as it shall needful seem to make them clear to thine untutored sight.
Both more refulgent and with slower steps the sun was holding now the noonday circle, which with each point of view moves here and there, when even as he who as a leader goes ahead of people stops, if something new he find upon his path, the ladies 7 stopped at a death-pale shadow's edge, like that which 'neath green leaves and darkling boughs the Alps cast o'er their icy mountain streams. In front of them I seemed to see Euphrates and Tigris from one fountain issue forth, and from each other slowly part as friends. O light and glory of the human race, what stream is this, which from one source unfolds, and then from its own self itself withdraws? In answer to this question I was told,
Pray that Matilda tell thee.
Whereupon, like one who frees himself from blame, replied the lovely lady,
This with other things hath he been told by me, and I am sure that Lethe's water hath not hid it from him.
And Beatrice,
Perhaps a greater care, which oft deprives one's memory of its power, hath made the vision of his mind's eye dark. But Unue behold, which yonder now is flowing forth, conduct him to its bank, and, as thou'rt wont, revive his lifeless power.
even as a noble soul makes no excuse, but to another's will its own conforms, as soon as e'er by outward signs disclosed. Even so, when she had taken hold of me, the lovely lady moved, and then to Statius said with a lady's manner,
Come with him.
If, reader, I had now more space for writing, I'd sing, at least in part, of that sweet drink, which never would have satisfied my thirst. But inasmuch as filled are all the pages planned warp-like for this second canticle, no further doth art's bridle let me go. From that most holy water I returned made young again, as new trees are in spring, when with new foliage they renew themselves, pure, and disposed to rise up to the stars.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 33.